Good evening, everyone, and happy Makar Sankranti and all the festivals which are there in Pan India. And being the festivity on that particular day, if we can understand legal nuances and otherwise different aspects from a person like Mr. Subrahmanya, who is not only the Dean of CMR, and this is the part 2 of the continuum in the series which we have started, relevance of research methods in scholarly writing. Being a Saturday, we will not take much time and we request Mr. Subrahmanya to share his knowledge. Over to you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Vikas and your team. Today we will be just discussing something relating to the relevance of research methods in scholarly writing. The fundamental thing that comes to the mind is whether methods are required in scholarly writing. If you examine the great scholars of the time, most of them right from the 16th century until the present, without a systematic scientific approach, have followed certain methods. Now, when I speak of this, I shall just give you a few instances and illustrations. And these instances and illustrations come from the 16th century itself. Now, this naturally helps us to know what we call as the comparative method of legal research in a socio-economic society. Now, what is this comparative legal research? And this comparative legal research made the scholars of the time to go into the societal problems and to know the societal problems very clearly and very systematically. And having understood these societal problems, they were in a position to give a remedy by way of a conclusion or by way of a solution or by way of a resolution. Now you take one or two important writers who appeared during the time of the French Revolution. Now one such writer happened to be the great Rousseau. Now the Rousseau's social contract happened to be the Magna Carta of that time. And most of the scholars, especially Professor H.A.L. Fisher, who in his study on history of Europe points out that man is born free, but everywhere he is in chains, actually lit the fire of French Revolution. So it actually lit the fire of French Revolution. And this one slogan, that is, man is born free, but everywhere is in chains, remember, was a challenge to human civilization. And the point at issue is, here is a man who had developed a scholarly temperament, observes the society of the time. There were lots of problems in the French society at that time. And when I speak of the problems in the French society, the weakness of the rulers who succeeded after Louis XIV to the state of France. They were very weak. Louis XV mounted the throne of the state of France at the age of 5. And when he mounted, he just said, "We are so young." And he did not do anything. But then, when he was on his deathbed, he said, "It will last as long as I. My successor will have to take care of himself or herself." Now, these are, remember, the predictions which they were saying, soliloquies which they have said, my successor will have to take care of himself or herself. Now, you just examine in the French society of the time. The French society of the time happened to be split into 3 divisions. One is the ruling class. They enjoyed, they had control and supremacy of the wealth of everyone. Now, the second one is the nobility. And the nobility class, remember, they did not bother when the crop, especially was about to be harvested in kilometers, all the paddy, the wheat grounds and other areas. These people will take their horses and just destroy the crops. And it became a hunting ground for these, what we call as their animals, to be taken there and be paraded. Now, there was another class which is known as the clergy. Now, the clergy class, as you know, you might be knowing, right from the day of the Crusades, has taken place soon after the 11th century. They have been managing and trying to control the emperors. And there were another that is called the peasants. Now, the peasants had to pay the tax, and their condition was palpable, miserable, and there was nobody to take care of their position, and there was nobody to protect them. And slowly and steadily, what we call as the resurgence or the anti-government movement was taking place within. And at this juncture, there came Rousseau. He was observing, he was analyzing, he was trying to understand it. And they said people need their basic rights. And these basic rights are being violated. And it is the duty of the concerned state to protect these rights. And if they do not, or if they fail to protect these rights, they should be overthrown. See, many of them today, when they read Rousseau's writing, they say, no, they did not follow any methodology. But then this scientific temperament that was taking place in the society and the comparative methodology that was taking place between the state of France and the state of England. And in England, the society was peaceful, but still it was flourishing. And there was no sunset, as the writer used to say. But then here is a case wherein because of the exploitation that was continuously perpetrated, the society was suffering. And that came through their pen, and that made the revolution real. Now, similarly, there was another important writer who is known as Montesquieu. Montesquieu is the person who wrote The Spirit of Laws. And The Spirit of Laws, remember, it ran into 21 editions in just 18 months. And that is where, remember, the people read, they reread, they bought the book again, and they read, and ultimately the rose in revolt and the revolution have taken place. The very purpose of bringing out these things is just to tell you that what we call as the sociological method of research, or the application of the principle of societal attitude and the societal behavior to the legislations, was there then in the 17th and 18th and the 19th century itself. Now that is where, when we come to the 19th and 20th century, there appeared great scholars, Max Weber and Llewellyn. And these are the two scholars who go to the extent of finding out that Rousseau, Montesquieu, and many others had, remember, cultivated the type of what we call the sociological attitude and the trends in the society and the changing attitude of the society were taken care of by them. Now, one important aspect that I just intend to bring home here. Now, if you take up comparative legal research, now you make a study of your own country or your own problem, maybe in the federal structure or within a state. Now, when you take up this problem and afterwards you compare with the federal structure or within the federation of a single state, you get to know the plus points as well as the minus points. Suppose, for example, in India, a particular person is doing a research on a topic. And when he does this topic, a research on this topic, he naturally intends to study something in the state of Great Britain. Thereafterwards, he makes a comparison. When he makes a comparison, he will find out what we call as the missed opportunities, the loopholes, the stumbling blocks, the drawbacks, all of them he will come to know. And then by taking into consideration the other society, he can give a kind of solution which are implementable. That is the advantage of comparative legal research. When we go further, there are other types of researches as well. When I speak about other types of researches, I just intend to speak to you today, concentrate mainly on one important type of research, which is gaining momentum, which is called as action research. Now, what exactly you mean by action research, and how and why this action research is being pampered or facilitated or given patronage by the research scholars of the time, and it is being applied even by the universities. Now, for example, I will give you instances and explain through illustrations, and these illustrations which I am going to give are practical ones so that everyone understands the point better. Now, one instance happened to be an instance, just apply your mind. Go back to 2013. It was in the year 2013, the Criminal Law Amendment Act was passed by the government of India after the Nirbhaya case. Now, the 2013 amendment came in, and this amendment introduced section 354 A, B, C, D. Now, when they introduced these sections, they said these are certain sections which are very much essential to regulate and to control the behavior and the behavior pattern of the people, and it should be seriously taken. And if they are found guilty with the convincing evidence, they are to be punished. Now, the 354A happened to be a case relating to what we call as sexual harassment. B happened to be related to sexual assault. Now, the 3 happened to be voyeurism. And D happened to be one more, which is called as stalking. And most of the students of law and those listeners who are here will be in a position to appreciate the point better. Now, the point at issue is, in these cases, they went to the extent of pointing out that in the event of finding evidence by the court of law, and in the event of finding convincing evidence, the concerned person who is responsible in committing this offense, maybe sexual harassment, or maybe sexual harassment and cruelty that is being shown, or voyeurism, or that is voyeurism is just trying to chase the girl, either through various modes, taking her photograph and other things. And the stalking is following the girl through internet, through WhatsApp, through Twitter. All are punishable up to a minimum period of 3 years. Not only it is punishable up to a period of minimum 3 years, and the punishment can be extended up to a period of 5 years. Now, what has happened was the government of India immediately later created a criminal compensation fund. And especially, for example, we take the instance relating to 326A. Now, this is a section which is added for purpose of preventing acid attacks that are taking place in the university campuses and other places. In the event of a particular person who becomes a victim of an acid attack, the punishment that is being given is a minimum of 5 years. And it can be extended up to a period of 7 years. Now, you may be interested to know what is this research I am speaking about, action research. Now, since 2013, the legislation is in force. When the legislation is in force, as a student of law, with a research mind, you should try to find out how many cases after the enactment of the legislation have come up before the court of law, and how many of them are booked for these cases, and how many of them are tried, and how many of them are convicted. Now then afterwards, you take the statistics of a state, and if from each state, remember how many of them are convicted, whether it is in force or at all, if at all. And if it is in force, how many of them are booked, how many of them are tried, the trial has completed, and how many of them are convicted. You just bring out put a graph or a pie chart, which state is leading. Now, this type of research, for example, when we speak of acid attack, now just find out the same way, how many of them are booked under acid attack. How many of the states have become parties to this amendment? And how many of them have applied for criminal injuries compensation through the fund that is being allocated by the government of India and which is dispersed by what we call as the Legal Service Authority. Now, Legal Service Authority, how much fund has been given each year? How many of them are being dispersed? How many applications are pending with the State Legal Service Authority? Now, this is what we call as action research on a particular point. Now, for example, the legislation has come. How do you find out that the legislation to a certain extent is weak? And in which areas you find the weakness of legislation which is apparent on the face of the record? And this would actually help the administration in overcoming the problem. And these instances of these types of research are to be given importance today. Now you take another instance happened to be, for example, the Right to Information Act has come into force since 2005. And it is almost, remember, it is 22 years since the passing of the legislation. Having the legislation which has come into force, now you just take a topic of research relating to how many of the panchayats in rural areas this legislation is being followed. Now, how many of the panchayat members in the rural areas are aware of a legislation which is known as the Right to Information Act? Now, for example, take it this way, you have Narega. Under Narega, there are several schemes which are being given. And you might be knowing, during the time of Corona, the government of India announced that for 100 days, they will give a job to anybody. Go to the panchayat office, and within the locality of the panchayat office, just find out how many of the people situated or living within the vicinity of the panchayat, attached to the panchayat office, have been given a job, 100 days job. And how much money has been dispersed. And how much money they have received from the central government as well as from the state government. Take a statistics of this and compare it with other villages. Now, if you find certain basic apparent, what we call as loopholes, you suggest it so that the government will be in a position to plug these loopholes. And later, the government of India may initiate action in improving the legislation and make it more effective. This is very much essential for a developing society like India. That is why action research is given and considered as an important type of research today. Now, take another area, for example. Now, how many of the people in a remote society, maybe in West Bengal or maybe in Karnataka, are aware of the presence of a legislation known as the Right to Information Act? And in the panchayats itself, some of the members may not be knowing. It's a fact. And in such situation, how we can bring the knowledge of these acts to these people? And whether the canvassing mode done by the panchayat is upright or not. For example, when I speak about the canvas, first they put it in the billboards. Then they may place street plays, or then they may do advertisement. And whether these modes are good enough or some other modes are to be followed or observed. And these are to be done by the researchers themselves. That is where the thought process is incessant and continuous. And when this is done instantly and continuously, remember, you can expect certain progress in the society because you get to know the weakness of the legislation. Now you take another important legislation like Guarantee of Services Act. Now, what is this Guarantee of Services Act? Now, the state of Karnataka in the year 2011 brought a legislation known as the Karnataka Guarantee of Services Act. Suppose, for example, a particular person has applied for the clearance of his file with a purpose to the Vidhan Sabha. Now, when he does this job, now at times what happens is application, remember, will not be known where it has gone and what is its fate. Now, that is where Guarantee of Services Act provides guarantee of the service which you are asking from the concerned state. Karnataka passed this legislation in the year 2011 and West Bengal government passed it in the year 2013. And thereafterwards, the other state is Maharashtra, which passed the legislation in the year 2015. So certain services are given to the subject wherein these services are protected. Suppose, for example, to take it this way, today if you apply before the office of the Tahsildar or before the office of the Deputy Commissioner, you get to know where the application is, from where it goes. Suppose, for example, if you submit it to the office of the Tahsildar, from the Tahsildar's office, it will go to the office of the Assistant Commissioner. From the office of the Assistant Commissioner, it will go to the Deputy Commissioner, from the Deputy Commissioner to Divisional Commissioner, from there to the Chief Secretary. And the services are to be given within the period fixed of time. They cannot just sleep over the file. Now, this has to be done. This is done with a purpose to see that the administration that is being done should be smooth and it should be in a position to render justice to society. Now, these states are the premier states which immediately passed legislation of this type. Now, try to make an analysis of this and afterwards try to find a comparison, a comparative study of this and which of the laws which are functioning more effectively. And in the states which is not more effective, what exactly are the weaknesses and the loopholes and how this could be plugged. As a researcher, especially in law, remember, you have to take up societal problems. And it is not doctrinal research. If you take up doctrinal research or analytical research, remember, you will not be discussing issues relating to what ought to be. You know only what is. Unless you get to know what ought to be, you cannot think of becoming a good research scholar, and your writing can never be considered as scholarly. That is the very purpose of telling these important things. One important development legislation which came in the year 2017 happened to be the period that was given for purpose of maternity was increased from 12 weeks to 26 weeks. So earlier it was 12 weeks. So maternity benefit, a person working in a government office or anywhere is entitled to get the benefit up to 12 weeks, 6 weeks before the delivery and 6 weeks after the delivery. So the legislation which was brought in the year 2017 has gone that far and it said, remember, 6 months you can avail it. And 8 weeks, that is 2 months before the delivery and remaining 4 months after the delivery. And this benefit is even given to a mother who adopts a child who is below 3 months. So a mother who adopts a child and the age of the child is just below 3 months is also entitled to, remember, get the benefit at least up to 12 weeks. Now, in situations of this type, make an analysis whether any of the states have become parties to this legislation within the federal structure. How many of them are not adopted this legislation? And those states wherein the legislation is adopted and implemented, how many cases have come before the court of law? How much money and salary is disbursed under this count? And what exactly are the reasons for not encouraging a legislation of this type? Now, in order to know this, remember, you should make a study. This is action research. You get to know, you come to know, and to actually know the real weakness of the legislation through action. Now, thereafterwards, I just intend to give you 2-3 other illustrations as well. Now, these illustrations are very natural illustrations which are being given by the great learned scholars of this country under action research. Now, one such instance happened to be, for example, take this way. In the state of West Bengal, you have a place known as Jalpaiguri. Jalpaiguri, remember, known for witchcraft and witch hunting. And in the name of witch hunting and witchcraft, human sacrifices are made. And how do you prevent this? I was working in NEJS Calcutta as the head of the center, director of the center on public policy. So first is we wanted to know the problem. And when we wanted to know the problem, we just tried to invert the best of resource persons from India. There were several resource persons. The rest of them came from the different places. 2 of them came from Maharashtra, 2 of them from Delhi, and 2-3 of them Calcutta. And we had a discussion. And we came to know the realities of the problem. Having come to know the realities of the problem, remember, we wanted to research on this problem. And remember, in order to research in this area, you have to go to Jalpaiguri. And having gone to Jalpaiguri, you have to earn the goodwill of the people. If you don't earn the goodwill of the people, and if you don't become one with them, and if you don't get their confidence, you will not be getting any information, nor your life will be in danger. So in order to avoid that, remember, we have to be very friendly with them. We should become part of their system. And thereafter, slowly getting to know why this is happening. And once you come to know the reasons, then remember, education is the best mode. Try to put these children into schools. Those who have the age, they can be put to schools and they can be made to study there. And as and when they come, as and when they go, being friends, remember, we will be in a position to eradicate what is the preconceived notion which is overworking in their minds. And thereafter, remember, you just try to observe certain things. They have several festivals. And in these festivals, remember, umpteen sacrifices are made. And you should have a very good relationship with them. And afterwards, you should convince them how to avoid these things so that you become good citizens of tomorrow. And you are wasting your precious money, hard-earned money, and so that you become good citizens for a period of time. And this was also done. Now, another instance happened to me again. I am giving you the instance of the state of West Bengal. In the state of West Bengal, what was happening is maybe happening even now also. Now, there were several Bangladesh refugees who crossed into the borders of the state of India. Having crossed into the border state of India, these women and children are used for purpose of smuggling or racketing or under Article 23 of the Constitution of India. Now, in such situations, how do you prevent them? If you go there, you will not get the information. You have to collect the information and thereafter study the situation, and then you can go. In order to prevent these incidents and instances, there are certain NGOs who are working. And approach the NGOs, and having approached the NGOs, you try to know why this is happening. And when you get to know through what we call as the reserved police force, which are being put there, you will get more information. And thereafter, you go to the spot, be one with the NGOs as well as the reserved police force, CRPF. Then you try to give a solution to them so that the smuggling of these women and children could be prevented to a certain extent. You might be knowing, last year, many of them were found in Tamil Nadu, in Chennai. And most of them happened to be Bangladeshi nationals, and they had Aadhaar card, everything, all of them. And they were about to be packed off to some countries who are nearby, maybe to the Gulf or some other place. Now, this has to be prevented, and human rights are to be restored, come what may. And this is the only method which is by action, because they see you become first and foremost, you observe what is happening there. You will not get the information immediately. How they seek in and sneak into the territory of the state of India. And when they sneak in, who are going to give protection to them? And there are several parties to this, and you have to take everyone into consideration and confidence. And afterwards, remember, eliminate the bad elements and try to give good education to them and try to overcome. This is the effect of the implementation of a legislation which is being done and enacted by a state government. Now you take another instance happened to be, it is related to the problem of poverty. There was a professor of economics, and this professor of economics, Muhammad Yunus, got the Nobel Prize, and he's a Bangladeshi. Now he was working as a professor of economics in the University of Chittagong. Now he wanted to conduct a study relating to the improvement of poverty. See, all people in the villages are poverty stricken. Their earnings were very low. And in a few cases, there was no earning. And if they go there and work, still the barter system prevailing there. In such a situation, Muhammad Yunus goes to a few villages. Having gone to a particular village, he tried to study the problem. Having tried to study the problem, he found out that these women had no access to finance. And if they go and seek finance from the moneylenders, they would exploit them. Now, money lenders exploit to such an extent wherein they will give more, in the morning they will give 10 rupees and in the evening they will ask for 20 rupees. So it is 100% interest. This was the situation that was prevailing. Now, having studied their problem threadbare in these villages, along with his students and research scholars, he tried to find out a few people there, and most of them were women. And for those women, he just gives some money and tells them that only minimal interest is going to be charged, and with using this money, you prepare the local, what we call as bamboo chairs. So in that area, you find a lot of bamboos. And of these bamboos, they would prepare stools and take it to the market and sell, make money. So when some finance is being given to them, and these people brought the required material and started doing it, and they sold it, and they flourished. And without any difficulty, without any hiccup, they were able to give the money which was advanced to them by this professor. Now, the professor understood the problem. Having understood the problem, then he did it in a larger scale. And when he did it in a larger scale, remember, lots of people got the benefit, and the society and the villages started improving their economic conditions. And when the very activity spread far and wide into a few villages, he approaches the government. First, he took money from the Gramin Bank. In the first instance, he spent the money from his pocket. Then he approaches the Gramin Bank, wherein a few more got the benefit. Then when he realized that this is not enough, he should go in a bigger scale, he approaches the government, and the government bank gave the money and established a few Gramin banks for this purpose only, to improve the economic conditions of the people. This is how, remember, action research in every sphere, comes to the rescue of everyone. Now, thereafterwards, I just intend to speak to you something relating to what we call as prognostic type of research. Now, what is this prognostic type of research? Why it is relevant today? Now, based on the certain set of facts, based on the certain set of circumstances, you forecast the shape of things to come. For example, now the economists of India, as well as the state of the United States today, go to the extent of pointing out, just news which I read, by 2033, a few economies in the world, and even of our neighbors, are going to come down. And they will have a very difficult time. And remember, if they prepare or take steps to overcome this, they will be in a position to improve. Otherwise, it will be climax and peril. So in order to overcome the peril, they have to adopt methods now itself. And if they fail to adopt methods now itself, in the next 10 years, there will be problems which cannot be visualized and which cannot be thought of, which cannot be given a solution. That is what is indicated by them. So this is where what we call is, based on the present set of facts, you try to, remember, find out the shape of things to come in the near future. Now, there was a great scholar, a great historian. He is known as H.G. Wells. H.G. Wells is the man who wrote the world history. You might be knowing. Many of you have heard him about also, must have heard him also. H.G. Wells, in the year 1937-38, wrote a book. And the name of the book is The Shape of Things to Come in the Future. Now, when I speak about the shape of things to come in the future, now he was the one who said the present iron age is going to be replaced by the plastic age. What do you mean by this? In 1938, remember, at that time, all the buckets were made of iron. Tumblers were made of iron. Glasses were made of iron. And even the eating plates were made of iron, And in the present day generation may find difficult to lift even. And here is the man, he said the present iron age is going to be replaced by the plastic age. The World War came to an end. And thereafterwards, introduction of plastic started. And today you find all materials which are made plastic, even the computer chips are attached to plastic material. See, He was the one who was telling the shape of things to come in the future. There was another person by name Arnold J. Toynbee. Arnold J. Toynbee happened to be a man, remember, who wrote the study of history in 24 volumes. And in the concluding part, he says, the present society is going to be a society at the end wherein the microscopic minority will be the dominant majority, which is called as the mimesis. The microscopic minority is going to be the dominant majority. Now, if you look to the economics and the developing pattern and the population and the demography, you will admit of what Arnold J. Toynbee has said, remember, about 60 years ago or 70 years ago in his study of history. And this is proving beyond doubt. Now, my point is, remember the analysis of the mind. The analysis which was made by them were in a position to say, if this is the statistics today, this is going to be the future tomorrow, maybe after 50 years. And for a developing country like India, we need prognostic research scholars in plenty, because we have plenty of problems, water scarcity ravaging the country during summer, and we need solution to that. And we have several other problems in almost all areas, and we need, remember, researchers in this area. And if you take doctrinal researchers, it is nothing but studying the studied, repeating the repeated, and telling the told already. And we don't want such type of researchers, but we need solution to the existing problem in the country. And that has to be done. And you take another scholar happened to be the man who wrote Das Kapital. Now, Das Kapital, remember, was written by the great Karl Marx. And he wrote one in 1846, another one 1847, and another one in 1848. Poverty of philosophy came in, and then came the Das Kapital. Now, remember, he was a German, and he was a acute observer of things. This acute observer of things was just looking to the state of Soviet Russia. He was just looking to what was happening in the society of the state of Soviet Russia. Now, remember, there were two classes. One is the what we call as the ruling class. They are called as the bourgeois. And the second one is the nobility, supported by the ruling class. And the other one is the proletariat, the poor working class. And the poor working class, remember, he is being abused, misused, and overused at every level. And he was made to work, and in return, he did not get anything. This man sitting in a house, just watching whether it will continue. He said, it is not going to continue, but there will be resistance. And the resistance will be, remember, will be ruthlessly snubbed and stopped, because power is in the hands of what we call as the nobility and the ruling class. And when they have the ruling class, when they have the power, the lawmaking power, they know how to curb it through the machinery which is being employed by them. But then the fight is not going to stop. It will continue. It will continue and continue over a period of time until the dictatorship of the proletariat. Remember, this man pointed out about the fight between the rich and the poor, or between the bourgeois and the proletariat. And this fight will continue, but one day the proletariat, the people, the what we call as the workers of the state of Soviet Russia will become supreme, and they will start running the administration. Now, 68 years afterwards, 1848, add 68, 69 years. In the year 1917, the Bolshevik Revolution took place. And in the Bolshevik Revolution that has taken place, the entire what we call as the edifice was removed and chased, eliminated. And the dictatorship of the proletariat led by Lenin came to be established in the state of Soviet Russia. Now, we are not interested in the story of it. We are just wanted in the solution which was given by this man. or a shape of the things which is likely to come, a forecast that was made. And a forecast which was made by him, ultimately, remember, respected by everyone. I will go back a little before. During the course of French Revolution, there was a British statesman. And the British and the French, remember, always at loggerheads. And this statesman was none but Edmund Burke and was the greatest parliamentarian of the time. And this greatest parliamentarian of the time, remember, was a well-read person. And his knowledge in comparative constitutional law at that time was respected in high esteem. And remember, he has been receiving letters from the state of France. And certain people who have visited the state of France during the course of the French Revolution were writing to him. I just intend to tell you a letter which was written by Lord North. Lord North, remember, was in the state of Normandy in the state of France. Lord North writes a letter to Lord Temple, who was in England. And the content of the letter is very simple. The greatest thing to admit today is to say that this country is on the verge of a great revolution. The people of Normandy are surviving on the root as well as the grass of the concerned place where they live. So it was, revolution is inevitable. And it came and it ravaged the state of France. See, this is where this thinker, Edmund Burke, was able to see the developments, and ultimately he was in a position to give a solution. He wrote a book in 1790. In 1789, the revolution broke out. Just within 1 year, within 365 days, this person writes a book, and in the book he simply states, this will not lead to well-ordered progress. Ultimately, the state of France will be taken over by a dictator. Napoleon Bonaparte of the state of France became a dictator and crowned himself as the dictator of the state of France in 1894. And he became an emperor 10 years afterwards. So this is the story, what we call as, remember, the sociological thinkers, comparative studies which are made by them, and the other developments which are created by them. Now you take an instance happened to be creative research. What is this creative research? Now when you take up creative research, remember, is the imagination of the mind. How beautiful it should be. Now you have, at least a few of you know F.M. Hussain, a great artist. At least a few of you, if you are from the south or from the Goa, you know a person known as Mario Miranda. Now, they are artists of high caliber. Now, if you invite to a function and just request them and give you a piece of chalk or a pencil, please draw something. And they will immediately go there and finish it within just, remember, 3 to 4 minutes. And afterwards, they will give a lecture on those art for about 2 hours. What is this? And it depicts, it represents what? Each line will represent something, and on which you'll be able to speak hours together. Now, this is what we call as creative research. As and when you work, you will be in a position to say that this should be dictated and it should be told to the people, and if it is told, they will understand it better. Now, you take the best of what we call as the creative singers. For example, take Bhimsen Joshi. Oh, then you take, many of them are there, Subbulakshmi and Basuraj Rajguru, all the best of the Hindustani singers and the best of the vocalists in South, or the best of the, what we call as drum beaters. Now, taken this way, a particular lady, for instance, a Bharatanatyam dancer like Chitra Vishweshwaran is performing a Bharatanatyam. When she is performing before the public a Bharatanatyam, there will be applause. And people clap and keep clapping. The lady is not interested, but she is interested and she is immersed in dancing. Because she is worried only to see how the next step has to be given. And if the next step is given in a particular way, it will be appreciated, it will be admired. No, that is what always she thinks of it. She thinks of it, how best I can move my legs, how it should be depicted, and it should be flawless. Now you think of the singers, for example, in this way, Pandit Bhimchand Joshi, and he gives a raga, Bhairavi. When he sings, remember, when it is presented, he is not worried about you. He is immersed in the music. And he knows it comes in a particular alapana. Then only that raga will be appreciated. Otherwise, people will not. Having gone home, when people send a cassette or the DVD, whatever it is, he will listen and they say, there are still scope for improvement. That is the imagination of the creative research. That is where, for example, take it this way, as and when you start your research writing. And when you start your research writing, you know what materials you have collected and how best it can be made use of, that also you know. And you have made the tentative chapterization as well. First, remember, at that time, you just suddenly, just like Eureka, in the famous Eureka, he said, the same person, Archimedes. Now you develop certain things, this principle can be brought in. And if it can be brought in, it can be justified also. This is creative mind. As and when you listen, remember, you should know how this should be developed and what should not be developed and how we go about it. Now you take one more research method, which is called the historical method of research. When I speak about the historical method of research, remember, history is a science, no less, no more. This is not said by me, it is said by J.B. Moore, a great historian. History is a science, no less, no more. Now, the art of writing history is totally different from collecting materials. Now, take it this way, when I speak of collecting the sources for purpose of writing history, it depends on, remember, 3 or 4 important sources. First is what we call as the inscriptional evidences. Then come the literary evidences. The third one is the numismatic evidences. And fourth one is the archaeological evidences. Now you may ask me, what is this inscriptional evidences? When I speak about the inscriptional evidence, suppose, for example, during the time of Ashoka or during the time of Mauryas or Guptas or any dynasty, Cholas, now they have left hundreds of inscriptions. And these inscriptions, which is left behind to posterity, indicate the economic development of the country that has taken place. It virtually speaks about what work they have done, whom they worshipped, how they lived. All these things are being shown through the inscriptions. And to know the inscriptions and read, you should know a person who knows the language in which it is written. Suppose, for example, you are working somewhere in the north and you know only Hindi. And the inscriptions are left in Prakrit, or it is written in Sanskrit, or it is written in Tamil. Naturally, you should go and find out a man who is well versed in these languages to get the true meaning of it. That is what we call as inscriptional evidences, which is very much essential for a scholar in history, and it is useful even for other writings as well. Then what we call as the numismatic evidences. Now, several dynasties have issued coins, gold coins, except Muhammad bin Tughlaq, who issued only the coins which are made of leather. Now, these coins virtually speak about the economic conditions of the state, how the people flourished there. And remember, in these coins, remember, there are certain symbols. These symbols actually represent the strength of the economy of the people or the rulers. And studying these coins, taking up the coins, studying these coins, it's not a small job. You have lots of people required, and you have to take the suggestions because it is in different languages. So this is study of numismatics. Now, studying of archaeology, take it this way. You go to temples, and remember, the richest temples like the Rajaraja temple in Tanjore. or Madurai, Meenakshi temple, or many of them, or the lake temple in Mahabalipuram. All that, remember, world sites today protected by the what we call as the UNESCO. And remember, you have a history of its own, you get to know. And literary writings, another. Now, each dynasty will have scholars and they have left behind. For example, when you go to the Mughal history or the history of the Tughlaqs or the Khiljis and Bahmanis, you come to know a name of a great writer, Ziaul Barani. And Ziaul Barani, remember, he has left a lot of writings which speaks about the culture of the people and the administration, how it is being done, and for which you should know the language, otherwise you cannot. And moreover, it is written in a poetical language. Explanation is very difficult to know. And again, you will rely exclusively on the person. This is something relating to historical method. Now, when we speak about historical methods, remember there are four types of points which are being harped upon in historical research. One is heuristics. That is the art of collecting the documents. Other day I have spoken to you how difficult it is to collect a document. Then afterwards, the other one is criticism. Then comes what we call as exposition. And afterwards, synthesis. Exposition, remember, you should be in a position to put it in such a way wherein continuity of thought in your presentation is maintained so that there is no problem or no criticism which can be made by anybody. Now, when we take up the historical method, there are 2 or 3 important developments which are being spoken. Now, the first thing that is being said happened to be now individual's history, collective history, and typical history. Now, I will start with the last one, which I said, what is this typical history which is peculiar to a society? Now, when you speak about the peculiar, that is the typical history of a society, now you take the Purda system in this country, or you take the other one, that is in the event of the death of the husband, the wife is jumping into the funeral fire, Sati system. Now, that is, remember, a typical thing which is being followed. And today, the laws are being enacted and it is put to an end. Or these are put to an end today. So, these are typical facts in the history of a particular country. Now, what are the collective facts? When I speak about the collective facts, remember, it may be wars, it may be revolutions, or it may be relating to some other developments that has taken place, sociological development or the religious movements. You take the history of the state of India, we speak about the Kalinga War. And the Kalinga War is important because after the Kalinga War, the man who fought the war and won the war, remember, relinquished and accepted his religion and accepted Buddhism. And afterwards, he became a propagator. Sent his brother and sister, all of them, to different countries in Southeast Asia to spread the message of Buddhism. Now you take another instance happened to be, this is religious movements, life and times of Buddha, or life and times of Adi Shankara. They're all religious movements. That is why we create movements that have taken place in the society. Now the other one is, after this, individual facts. When I speak about the individual facts, collective facts, typical facts. In individual facts, remember the activities which are being done by an important individual. For example, the Kalinga War, or the other war, the war that was fought during the time of Third Battle of Panipat, 1769. Now, like that, you have several instances. The historians will speak much about it. And that actually helps in the development of history. Now, the very purpose of telling this is very simple. Now, there are as many as 8 to 9 methods. All methods are important. Now, experimental method, remember, is very much essential because only through experiments you will be in a position to find out the truth. Not truth, but the truth. Because experiments will have to be done over a period of time. And when it is done, over a period of time, you come to know this exactly is the truth. That is why it is experimental method. Now, in administration also you find, and when there is some loss to the country, they will try to bring in a legislation by way of an experiment. If this experiment succeeds, this will remain, or else some other experiment which will be given by someone else, or invented by someone, or propagated by someone will replace the older one. And always in experimental method, remember, you should have wonderful peace. Peace of mind is very much required for a research scholar. And if you don't have peace of mind, you can never think of becoming a good scholar, especially in experimental research. Sociological research, I just pointed out and give you umpteen illustrations. I spoke to you about action research. I spoke one more research which is have to be discussed, happen to be a research which is being departmental. For example, you take the instance of Niti Aayog. Now, Niti Aayog will bring in certain policies, and having brought certain policies, these departmental research will try to examine the effectiveness of those policies, the success of those policies, the failures, if any, of those policies. And once this is being done, they try to give a solution to it as well. There are several programs which are being introduced. A few of them are being withdrawn because they went to the extent of pointing out it is just not possible to carry with this because no purpose will be served by retaining this. And descriptive research, I have spoken to you extensively the other day. And then the doctoral research, I have spoken to you. And today, the methods of research which I have spoken to you will help you in a long way and give solutions to in becoming a good scholar, especially in research writing. Thank you very much.
The way you speak fluently, that too with large perspectives of aspects to be taken, that I always feel fascinated about, and I always feel that one has to learn how to remember things, that we are doing sessions on that aspect, how to remember things, how to read fast. But on such a large variety, we have taken on environment law, we have done on international law, and how to do research. And in this research topic also, we have seen that you have connected the dots into so much in different lines. It becomes so impressive that I will feel that one should also have a session that how you should remember things and how to collate the facts and thereafter dissipate to the people at large. So thank you, sir. And thank you to all those who have been connected with us. Everyone stay safe, stay blessed. And stay connected with us tomorrow at 6 p.m. We will be having a session on the jurisprudence regarding the GST, etc.